this panel will be the importance of worldwide compliance for the crypto industry. And we're going to have a huge list of panelists for this from different countries. We're going to travel from Mauritius to Argentina, to UK, to Hong Kong, and then Uganda with Kenneth. And now we are going to see the first question will be around what is the state of cryptocurrency in each of these countries. Firstly, I'm going to ask those who are present with us today to introduce themselves, and then we are going to ask all those who are online to introduce themselves. Ashveen, you may start.
Thank you, Benito. Good morning to you all once again, and good day to everybody else who's with us virtually. I'm going to be very brief. I've already been there and done that. Ashveen, Gopee, managing partner of Lex Frontier Law Firm, which is the member law firm of the Allied Global Alliance, the main sponsor of this event. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Ashveen. Songul.
Thank you. I am Songul Top, lawyer, member of Paris Bar. Sorry for my French accent. My office is based in Paris and is specialized in international law, real estate, commercial law, and tax law. I operate in European, US, Africa, Middle East, and Asian jurisdiction in international real estate and commercial. A regional representation office in Mauritius is in progress of establishment for business, real estate, and civil law. I'm experienced in the rapid expanding field of the crypto legal and accreditation within the crypto regulatory bodies in France and international level. Furthermore, I am the legal counsel of the Turkish Republic in Paris, which has an important economic growth and continue its industrial and commercial expansion in Mauritius and Africa, notably.
Thank you, Songul, and thank you for coming down to Mauritius for this summit. And now we are going to travel to the UK. So we are going to have Greg Poehler and Max Marmor. Greg, up to you.
Hi there, very good morning to you all in Mauritius. It's a pleasure to be with you virtually, albeit I wish very much that I was with you in person. Mauritius is a beautiful place. So I'm Greg Poehler. I'm a legal director within Sherard's commercial disputes team, and I'm looking forward to talking to you all about this very interesting and esoteric topic.
All right, thank you, Greg. Max?
Good morning, everyone. So I work with Greg Poehler at Sherard Solicitors. We are a London-based law firm. My expertise is in dispute resolution, and Greg and I are specifically focusing upon crypto assets and digital asset recovery. And I must say what a pleasure it is to be here this morning. And I echo Greg's sentiments that I wish we were there in person. We're honored to participate.
Thank you, Max. And next we're going to have Audra White. Maybe Audra, you can share what is the time in your town actually.
Hi, everyone. My name's Audra White. I'm a partner at Platt Shima Richmond, PLLC, which is a recent addition to the Alliant group. We are based in Dallas, Texas, so the time here is just after 2 a.m. So very early this morning, but I'm very excited to be with you all and excited to be a part of Alliant and get to know more of you better. So.
All right, thank you, Audra. And I know it is a very odd time to attend a conference, and thank you for making it. Anthony from Hong Kong.
Hi everyone, Anthony Marrin from HY Leung & Co in Hong Kong. Fortunately for me, it is now 3:15 p.m. So I am wide and awake and very excited to be part of this panel. I am a litigator by trade, but I also advise clients on crypto-related regulatory matters. So I'll be talking a bit about that. There are some changes in Hong Kong, so I'll be sharing that with you shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. And now we are going to move to Argentina, Buenos Aires with Diego Nunes.
Hi, hi to all. I'm Diego Nunes. I'm a partner at Estudio Nunes y Asociados. It's a legal firm in Argentina. We're a proud member of Elliott. I'm also a member of the regional committee for Elliott. I've been a lawyer for the last 13 years and have been actively working in the crypto space for the last 3. I specialize in startups and tech companies, and I'm also a director at Founder Institute for the Web3 chapter. So it's also 4 a.m. for me. So yeah, it's kind of strange to be up at this time, but crypto never sleeps.
And what is the time in Buenos Aires actually?
Yeah, 4:15 a.m. It's kind of too early or too late, depending on how you want to see it.
Oh, thank you, Diego. And I think Kenneth, I think will not be attending this panel. So thank you everyone for the introduction. And now I'm going to ask a general question and to everyone. And what is the state of cryptocurrency in your different countries? Maybe Ashveen, we already know a bit about Mauritius, what is the crypto, and maybe you want to add something quickly.
Right. Well, you know, it's no mystery to anybody here present, but I'm speaking mainly to those who are not from Mauritius and who are watching us online. Of course, Mauritius is a crypto-friendly jurisdiction. We now have a comprehensive legal framework, which is called the Virtual Asset and Digital Token Offering Services Act. The Act came into operation on the 7th of February 2022. It is a comprehensive legal framework in the sense that it provides, it recognizes, it provides a definition, legal definition of what is a virtual asset. It provides a legal definition of what is a virtual token. And it recognizes those two. It recognizes a smart contract. And also it provides licensing of 5 identified activities within the virtual asset businesses. So over and above that, we also have, as I said a little bit earlier, 7 rules that come to supplement the Act. And just to finish off, it's worth noting that even prior to the enactment of the VITOS, Mauritius already had in 2018 guide notes from the Financial Services Commission with regards to security tokens offering, security tokens trading system. And post now the VITOS, what we are seeing, because as we all know, it's an extremely dynamic space with almost everyday evolutions of the use and application of blockchain technology. We are seeing guide notes which are coming quite recurrently from the Financial Services Commission, the regulatory body of Mauritius. We've seen recently we have had a guide note on the NFTs. We have had a draft guide note on DAO, and we will be having a guide note on stablecoins in the days to come. So just to finish off, therefore, it is a very dynamic jurisdiction that we have here, which keep pace and is keeping pace with the evolution of the technology and its application.
So which means that we have a fully comprehensive legal framework for virtual asset service providers in Mauritius. So if any provider, they want to apply for crypto exchange, decentralized exchange, DeFi, or they can apply for such license in Mauritius.
Certainly. Not only that, but also broker-dealer licenses, virtual exchange markets, and etc. Marketplace.
And crypto financial advisors.
Custodian licenses. One thing, just to, I wish to highlight, you know, if you look at VARA Dubai, in Dubai, you can't be licensed, like a same entity have, they've got 7 licenses there. You cannot have one license, for example, an exchange, and also have a custodian license, which is creating a little bit of a situation there in Dubai. What they have to do, what are they doing? They are getting a license from Abu Dhabi, or they are coming to Mauritius. We don't have this kind of impediment and feature in Mauritius. One same entity can have an exchange license and also holds the custodian license.
Yeah, thank you for this, Ashveen. I know in France, Songul, that we have, I think, the #1 crypto exchange Binance is present, I think, in France. Can you tell us a bit more about the state of crypto in France?
Unlike some countries, the French legislator doesn't want a legal vacuum, but also following the numerous frauds in France and Europe, the legal framework of the crypto is on evidence. In French law, cryptocurrency have no clear legal status and are not recognized as financial instruments. The legal framework that regulates crypto activities in France focus on 2 levels of security: the compulsory registration of the PSN legal statute, and then obtaining the PSN license, which is optional. PSN, prestataire de service actif numérique, means digital asset service providers. The registration of the PSN will become stricter in the next coming months. Under the French Monetary and Financial Code, the PSN must register with the AMF, Autorité des marchés financiers. The application to be submitted to the AMF shall include several points. First, applicant information, such as the name of the applicant, some document of the company. Second, information relating to the good repute. A criminal record certificate is required for the chairman, managing director, managers, and skill of the shareholders and senior manager. And for the shareholder, we need the information identity and also the criminal record certificate. Third, information relating to the anti-money laundering and terrorist financial system. At least the PSN shall have continuous access to equity corresponding to equity requirement based on fixed overheads or on minimum capital or on level of activities. I underline that there is a list of the IMF, blacklisted company and website such as Forex, crypto assets derivatives. I underline also, this list is regularly updated, but cannot be exhaustive. New unauthorized company websites emerge regularly.
Thank you, Songul, for this. And before we are going to a very interesting jurisdiction, which is the USA, I think Kenneth has joined us. Kenneth, can you please introduce yourself quickly, please?
Yes, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Kenneth Muhangi. I am a partner and head of technology, media, telecommunications, and intellectual property at KT Advocates in Kampala, Uganda. I'm also a lecturer and head of subject of intellectual property at Uganda Christian University. Outside of that, I chair the technology committee of our Uganda Law Society, and I also lead all the lawyers in East Africa under the Technology, Media, and Telecommunications Committee, where I chair that particular committee. Lastly, I also represent Uganda at the Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution at the World Economic Forum, and my specialty is areas that we're looking at. Now, I feel bad for interrupting the discussion, but please.
All right, thank you, Kenneth, for this. And Audra, have a very interesting question with regard to the state of crypto in the USA, because many things are happening actually in the USA, mainly with the SEC versus Ripple case. And can you just update us on what is happening in the US?
Unfortunately, there's no comprehensive crypto regulation in the US. It's really, at the current time, kind of a hodgepodge of various state laws and SEC guidance without any real statutory any actual legislation that's been passed. So at this time, based on SEC guidance and recent SEC enforcement actions, including the Ripple case, which is still pending, and we'll see how that plays out. But the SEC has more or less, at least under the current leadership, has more or less taken the position that almost any token is potentially a security under the US securities laws, unless it's very widely distributed. So the only, I guess, digital assets that I would say are certainly not treated as securities or stable coins that don't offer any particular return or interest. They only represent a fiat currency, and ETH, Ethereum, and Bitcoin. So those are really the only kind of, I would say, digital assets that at this time you can be absolutely certain will not be considered securities. There might be a few other kind of like the top 10 that are distributed, widely distributed enough that maybe they are, not going to be considered securities. But essentially in the US, every kind of asset, any kind of financial asset is viewed under what we call the Howey test for determining whether it has the characteristics of an investment contract. An investment contract, it has 4 factors: an investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profit derived from the efforts of others. And why I say it matters how widely distributed the token is that this analysis typically turns on the derived from the efforts of others prong of that test. And so what the SEC is really looking for is whether there's any kind of centralized management of the network, of the blockchain. And if there is, then that particular token is subject potentially to being viewed as a security, unless clear legislation is passed by Congress. And that underlies, and I would just say that underlies really many of the enforcement actions that are happening right now, probably against Coinbase, certainly against Ripple and other protocols and exchanges.
And I think today there was a judgment which was released by the famous Judge Torres, right, in the SEC versus Ripple case. I don't know if you are updated. It was released this morning, and I think the Judge Torres has rejected the SEC motion with regard to the Hinman document.
That's right, and that's great news. Although not really determinative on any kind of analysis for crypto. But the SEC, Judge Torres did say that the SEC cannot keep their internal discussions with respect to, I think it was a 2018 internal discussions on whether Ethereum.
All right, thank you, Audra. Now let's move to Argentina again. Diego, I'm very excited to know what's happening in Argentina.
Sorry?
No, Audra, I think you broke up.
Thank you for this, Audra, and we'll move to Diego, please. Thank you.
Okay, great.
So yeah, actually, I wanted to first congratulate you all and the organizers, but mainly the Mauritius crypto community, because having people from the state and the regulators within this kind of events is something that's very, very interesting. And it's something very different of what we are seeing, for example, in Argentina. 3 years ago, for example, we had 2 projects of bills that were presented in our Congress and none passed, and none of them was really made in the consensus of the community and or the industry. So that basically our politicians just thought they had to do something regarding cryptocurrency, and they drafted something without even consulting people that are working within the space for the last, I don't know, 5-7 years. So this is actually a very important thing, I think, for this event and for Mauritius particularly. In Argentina, we are not seeing this kind of joint work. Right now, currently, we have new drafts. They are unlikely to pass this year or either be presented even because we are having elections in October, and this whole year will be most likely very much about the campaigns. So I don't think we're going to see any news before the next year. But the main consensus is that our SEC, the CNV, that's the securities agency, will be most likely be the regulator and the enforcer of all cryptocurrencies and their trading. Also, we have our central bank that operates a bit like the Fed in the US, that would be most likely a monitor of the operations and would be in charge of the on and off ramps. We had very interesting news the last week because they prohibited the payment service providers to operate in crypto. So that our central bank did this. So actually, as Ashveen told before, I think that this is a possibility in Mauritius. It wouldn't be a possibility in Argentina, but we are still missing some specific regulation on this topic. Also, in Argentina, we have the WIF, that's the anti-money laundering entity that they have to control all anti-money laundering measures and fight terrorist financing and that kind of crimes. And we are actually finding more low-level regulation, like very to the detail and much more to do with taxation than a general bill or a big consensus on what is a cryptocurrency, for example. So it's likely that we are going to have a very specific legal framework, but not a general that would be what we are still missing. I think it would be very important to have this consensus and have a general agreement on what the cryptocurrencies are and how they are going to be treated. But so far, we are not having this. So it's still a bit of what I heard and in the introduction, that's still a very broad playground, this sector for us lawyers. In which we can do a lot of things, but we have to prepare to comply with a lot of regulations that are likely to come.
All right, thank you for this, Diego. And now I'm very interested to know about the state of crypto in Uganda, right? I'm part of some crypto community in Uganda, and Kenneth, can you please help us to understand the state there, please?
Yeah, sure. Very interesting discussion so far. I'll just try to give you a brief as to what's happening in Uganda. The short of it or the long of it is that we don't have any specific regulation in Uganda that looks at cryptocurrency. And so we don't have any specific legal framework. However, we have seen, just like the discussions we're having now and in many other jurisdictions, we're looking at cryptocurrency either as an asset. We're looking at it, should it fall under our capital markets authority as a security, or is it a currency? And so we do have a central bank in Uganda, Bank of Uganda, which in April of last year wrote to all licensees under our National Payment Systems Act. Mobile money, this is something many of you have interacted with, is something that's very popular in East Africa and in Uganda in particular. And so every company that's dealing in payments, in mobile money, has to get a license from a central bank. But so the question was whether companies that are dealing or facilitating payments in Uganda can also be able to make payments that would go to a wallet that has cryptocurrency, or even to conclude and help people withdraw money from their wallets in fiat currency, where the wallet has cryptocurrency. So a central bank issued a circular asking all licensees to desist from dealing with any entity that has that wants to convert crypto assets. And so that is the current position at the moment. Someone did take them to court, and we do have a case, Silva Kayondo versus Bank of Uganda, which was decided in 2022. The challenge, though, is that that case really focused on a mode of instituting proceeding, which was judicial review. That decision to issue the plaintiff in that case challenged the decision for Bank of Uganda, rather than looking at the nature of crypto assets or the nature of cryptocurrency, whether it's an asset, a security, or a currency. But that particular law as it stands is that anyone who is dealing in cryptocurrency, that anyone who has a license from a central bank that is dealing in payments should not and cannot be able to handle or deal with any entity that's also dealing in cryptocurrency. So that means, as the law stands in Uganda, cryptocurrencies do not fall under our national payment systems framework. They are illegal and they are unlawful and cannot be accepted as a general payment instrument. But that is under our National Payment Systems Act. But away from that, in 2018, I spoke at a conference with a central bank. And under that, the central bank was considering putting cryptocurrencies under agency banking, because cryptocurrencies could be lent or exchanged with local currency, as has been done in Germany. I think in 2013, the Bitcoin Deutschland company that manages the exchange of Bitcoin entered into a partnership with another German bank, I think Fido, to provide banking services to their clients. And so that's something we're actively waiting for, to see how the central bank perhaps would be able to put cryptocurrencies under agency banking, since they've refused to put them under our payments law or regime. But although I must also add that the act itself, our National Payment Systems Act, does not talk about cryptocurrency. It talks about electronic currency. And if you read it actually without that particular decision, and for most of us, we're hoping that that decision will actually be appealed, we can't see anything that stops stops anyone from inferring cryptocurrency falls within the definition of electronic currency under that particular act. But away from that as well,
I think Kenneth, this part I think we'll cover it in the second question, please. Right?
Okay, that's okay.
Thank you, Kenneth. And Greg and Max, I know you have a prime minister who is, I don't know if I can say this, is pro crypto. Can you update us on the situation in the UK, please?
No, sure. Well, I think Ashveen used the word dynamic at the top of the session, and I think that the picture that's emerging from other jurisdictions sort of chimes with the position in the UK, in that there is no sort of coherent or bespoke architecture in the UK when it comes to cryptocurrency and digital asset regulation. But I mean, just to comment briefly on sort of the economics, the adoption of digital assets. I mean, we're all aware of the rise in retail investor participation in ownership of digital assets, the mainstream cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Ethereum. In terms of other digital assets, NFTs, decentralized finance, their adoption and ownership is growing. Decentralized finance in particular it's a small but growing feature of our economy. And I think a kind of tipping point was reached last year when the Law Commission, that's our body responsible for looking at particular sectors and proposing legal reforms, looked closely at digital asset regulation, and their 500-page report is actually interesting and worth the read if you're interested. But embedded within that report is this radical suggestion that we should create a third category of property that they label digital assets, alongside the traditional two categories that have existed for centuries: shows as in action, shows as in possession. We should have a third, digital objects, to capture the sort of nuances and idiosyncrasies of digital assets. But The other sort of angle to this is financial services regulation, where our Financial Conduct Authority is likewise looking at expanding and intensifying regulation of digital assets. But the position, simply put, as things stand, is that there is very little protection for owners of digital assets. There's a bit of a lacuna in the UK law. We have something called the Financial Services and Markets Act, which is this, you can think of as the kind of legislative backbone of our financial services sector, and that only really covers anything that's deemed a regulated activity if it involves a specified investment or a financial instrument. That means broadly things like shares, debentures, loans, mortgages. Unless a digital asset exhibits the characteristics of those sort of mainstream financial products, then it's not going to be caught by that regulatory infrastructure. So that means that there's very little protection and very little regulation of digital assets in their current form. The common law, on the other hand, and my colleague Max Marmor a bit later will talk about some specific cases, that has developed, as it typically does, in an iterative fashion, and has recognized the proprietary nature of digital assets, which has enabled litigants in particular to engage certain traditional English law remedies that one would deploy when seeking to facilitate the recovery of digital assets in, for example, fraud situations where there's been a loss or theft. The English courts have been prepared to grant, for example, freezing injunctions and disclosure orders and things like that to facilitate the recovery of digital assets in contentious situations. But in short, the position remains is that it is largely an unregulated asset class, and there are currently these sort of intellectual contortions, if you like, as to how to coherently classify what digital assets are and what legal consequences flow from that.
Right. Thank you, Greg. And I know, Anthony, that Hong Kong is a very vibrant jurisdiction. And what do we have for crypto there in Hong Kong, actually?
Yeah, so at the moment, well, in terms of how crypto is classified at the moment, it is broadly classified as something that is cryptographically secure digital representation of value, which I guess it's just a very broad definition. It is mostly in our anti-money laundering related ordinances. Well, there is a new anti-money laundering regime for virtual asset service providers that will be coming into effect in around 2 weeks' time, or on the 1st of June, which I will talk about more shortly. But the assets that the new regime talks about is, again, crypto asset, but it also specifically excludes government-issued fiat currencies, limited purpose digital tokens, or assets that constitute securities in future contracts. So it's just cryptocurrency as it is. For the litigators, and I think echoing what Greg has mentioned just now, our High Court has recently, in the case of Regatecoin, which was the decision was handed down around a month or so ago, for the first time declared that cryptocurrencies are properties and are capable of forming the subject matter of a trust or proprietary rights, as Greg mentioned. Our court, in the written judgment, followed leading cases in common law jurisdictions, including in Singapore, there was a case called B2C2 versus Coin. In England, AA versus Persons Unknown. And in New Zealand, the case of Rusco versus Cryptopia. So what we can see here in Hong Kong with the regulatory update, with the decision from the courts, is that we are gradually, and should I say finally, acknowledging the importance and demand of crypto assets around the world. And we are now trying to catch up with the rest of the world and the other jurisdictions.
All right, thank you, Anthony. You know, the biggest challenge when you're moderating a panel is the time management, right? I would like to ask all the panelists just to stick to the main points, please. Thank you. Let's come back to Mauritius now. Ashveen, can we do tokenization of assets under the Mauritian laws, actually?
Yes, we can. But let me, before answering this question, I think I've already done. But still, let me explain what tokenization of an asset is. A tokenization of an asset is basically a digital representation of an underlying asset. Now, the asset could be anything. It could be a collectible art. It could be property. It could be shares, securities, and etc. I did mention that a little bit earlier. Before the coming into force of the VITOS, we had guide notes from the FSC that recognizes that a security can be digitally represented. So you could have a digitalized representation, tokenization of share, for example. So here in Mauritius, if you look at the token, how you classify the token, whether it is a security or not, which is a main issue, because if it is a securities, then there's other legislative frameworks that are applicable, like the Securities Act and so on. You look at the underlying asset. Now, if the underlying asset is securities as defined in Section 2 of the Securities Act, you know that the token is a security as well. And if it is not, then it is not. But things can get a little bit more complex. Okay, that is for securities. But also, I mentioned earlier that the VITOS recognizes two types of digital asset. Okay, the first one is the virtual asset. The virtual asset is basically like Bitcoins, the native tokens on a blockchain, Bitcoins, Ethereums, and etc. And then it also recognizes something which is called the virtual token. Now, the virtual token is any token on a blockchain that uses smart contract. What that means, so as not to complicate things, it means that you can attach something to it. A virtual token under the VITOS, if it is a digital representation of anything else other than the securities, it is covered under the VITOS. So long story short, to answer your question, yes, we can, but you have to be very careful, however. When the VITOS came around, but that's just slightly over a year, you have to look at other legal frameworks. For instance, in Mauritius, the Code Civil governs, amongst other things, the right to property and the transfer of properties, of immovable properties, sorry. So if you are going to have a digital representation, you want to tokenize a building, for example, you have to be very careful, because there's a provision under the Civil Code that requires that all transfer of property can be made only through an act authentic. So those are the little things that you have to look at to finish off. Another example of where you have to be a little bit careful. If you want to, yes, there is a framework which recognizes tokenization of a securities. A share, by definition of the Securities Act, is a security. However, if you want to tokenize a security of a share of a company, it may clash with other acts like the Companies Act and the Registration Duties Act. What I mean to say by that, under the Companies Act requires that all the transfer of shares has to be made by way of a prescribed form, and the prescribed form is in the Registration Duties Act. So if tomorrow I've got a company, I've tokenized the shares, I've transferred it to you, Benito, say for $100,000, I'm no longer around, that the value of the shares is $1 million now. My heirs come into play, and they're going to say, well, look, there was a transfer, but it was a digital transfer of the shares. But has there been an effective transfer? Because the Companies Act doesn't recognize that. So those are the little features that I know, and I'm aware that regulators are looking into that. So, but once these are ironed out, things will be more seamless.
Thank you for this, Ashveen. And I think we have representative of the regulators here, and I think they are taking note of this. Thank you. Songul, there's something called the MiCA, MiCA, and the Markets in Crypto Asset Regulation. And this concerns the EU regulatory framework. Can you please tell us more about MiCA?
The European regulation on crypto asset markets as non-MiCA, was recently adopted by European Parliament in April. The European regulation on MiCA seeks to regulate the crypto assets that are not covered by existing European regulation on financial instruments and products, and create a balanced European framework that aims to protect the European investor. The text covers the offering and the admission to trading of crypto assets, including stablecoins. It also contains a framework of the prevention and prohibition of market abuse in crypto assets will apply anyone. The regulation will repress the national framework put in place by European Union member states. The MiCA regulation requires mandatory licensing for crypto asset service providers. Providers licensed under the MiCA regulation will be able to benefit from the European passports and provide their service in all countries on Union European. The regulation will help to increase the competitiveness of French and European players by creating a harmonized European framework and will ensure better protection for investors.
Thank you, Songul, for this. And now we're back to Argentina with Diego. Can you tell us more about the exchange legal structure in Argentina and the possibility to seize digital wallet, please?
Yes, sure. Well, I will try to keep it short. I don't know if you're aware, but Argentina is a very special country. We do have very strict exchange restrictions, and the real value of the US dollar is twice as much as the official rate. And only very specific operations can use the official rate. So it's partly non-existent. So we have a high inflation. We are talking about 3 digits. I think the last year is around 104%. And is one of the countries with most crypto adoption in the region because of this. So the central bank, as I mentioned before, regulates the on and off ramps that are the PSPs. And most Argentinians really have this craziness about crypto adoption because they can access with our legal tender to stable and volatile crypto assets. And that's something that we are not being able to do with fiat, with other fiat currencies due to these exchange restrictions. So the exchanges that we have for cryptocurrencies usually have a double structure in which they have a local company that works as a PSP that's regulated with a central bank license so that they can operate with our legal tender, that's the peso. And they have another company overseas that operates does all the crypto operations. For example, this allows them to send the liquidity from their local companies, Argentinian companies abroad, and they have all the liquidity in their companies in Lithuania, El Salvador, or maybe at some point even Mauritius, to be able to make these transactions and buy and sell very quickly all the cryptocurrencies without these restrictions we are finding. So it's a very interesting place to do business. So with this legal structure in mind, we have the PSPs that are heavily regulated and they have strict KYC procedures. So this also means that there's the possibility to seize and freeze the assets we are having in the PSPs because we can easily identify who's the person behind every account. So if we have any kind of debtor of taxes or any other kind of debt that's already determined, it's very easy to freeze those assets and then reclaim them. But that's not the same case with the crypto balances, since they are operated with the companies abroad, and since these accounts are not within Argentina, it's very difficult because we should send a notice to the companies and the exchanges about the possibility to freeze these assets, but it's not they will not necessarily comply, since they don't have an operation in Argentina. Of course, this is very long to explain, and we should have a longer conversation if anyone is interested. But if for crypto balances to be frozen and to recover assets from those accounts, we should have a more in-depth analysis, and it should be done case by case.
Yeah, thank you. And we need to highlight that we have software like chain analysis that we can track the movement of any crypto, right? And I think this is very good in terms of if we need to any hacking, anything that happened, we can track back where the money, and if they have exit out through crypto exchanges and all that, we can where we can have their KYC and all that. So that would help. Thank you, Diego. Anthony, what I've understood from your first intervention is that you don't have any specific legal framework for virtual asset in Hong Kong, but I think there are some new laws that will be introduced very, very soon. Can you please update us on this, please?
Yes, so there is a new legal framework under the Anti-Money Laundering Ordinance in Hong Kong, which states that basically all virtual asset exchanges, operating virtual asset exchanges in Hong Kong have to be licensed. And that will come into effect on 1st of June, 2023, so in 2 weeks' time. Currently, there are two exchanges that are licensed. Basically, I think it's more or less as a test run. One is Hashkey and one is OSL. So starting from 1st of June, there is a 12-month period for a grace period for companies to become compliant. I'm just going to go through some key basic requirements of the new regime. Of course, the SFC, the Security and Finance Commission in Hong Kong, will issue guidelines every now and then to add on to any rules that they feel that will help regulate the companies. The key basic requirements, including the VASP, must be a Hong Kong company or an overseas company registered in Hong Kong with a permanent place of business here. There has to be responsible officers. Representatives, directors, and the ultimate owners must be deemed approved as fit and proper by the SFC. There are current guidelines on what does fit and proper mean, but there may be new guidelines as we move along in the future. There has to be 2 responsible officers who are to assume general responsibility of overseeing the business and ensuring compliance. And one of these officers must be a director of the applicant and has to be ordinarily resident in Hong Kong. There are also requirements as to the premises used to keep records and documents. And again, it must be approved by the SFC. I think basically there is a strong emphasis on investor protection, given that in Hong Kong, it's still digital asset is still quite a bit of unknown, and there's still quite a lot of uncertainty amongst our residents here. So the VASP license holders will need to abide by quite robust set of requirements. These include the company and management structure has to be vetted and approved by the SFC. There must be risk management policies in place. You have to demonstrate that there's adequate financial resources in case anything goes south. And also, one of the licensing conditions at the beginning of this regime is that the VASPs will only be allowed to provide services to professional investors to begin with. There is no time limit on when this may change. But again, I believe the SFC is slowly trying to test the waters and to see how things go. Of course, in terms of anti-money laundering, there's also strict customer due diligence and record keeping requirements. So again, as I say, I think that Hong Kong, what we are trying to do is really catch up with the rest of the world, but also we are, being cautious with how things go ahead.
Thank you, Anthony. I think this is very positive from Hong Kong jurisdiction. Greg and Max, I know your law firm has been working on a recovery case of virtual assets. Can you share this experience with us and tell us more about what the law says with regard to the recovery of virtual assets in the UK?
Thanks, Benito. I think it's worth noting that in the English jurisdiction, the courts are certainly trying to position themselves at the forefront in terms of recovery of assets and cases to be heard. And really, the most important case which I should speak to is AA against persons unknown, which Anthony mentioned earlier. In this case was heard in 2019. It was really the seminal case in the English jurisdiction for asset recovery, in which, as Greg mentioned, cryptocurrency was defined as property. Typically in English law, property would be a chosen action or a chosen possession. And the court had to consider, with crypto being virtual, intangible, and incapable of possession per se, could it be property? And they ruled that it could, and as such granted a proprietary injunction, which is one of the strongest remedies in our courts. The case itself concerned a company who'd been hacked, and they'd been locked out of their systems, and they had to pay a ransom of Bitcoin equivalent to $950,000 in return for access. And the court was really at the forefront, not only for granting the proprietary injunction, but also keeping the anonymity of both the claimant and the defendants to stop the defendants from potentially dissipating their assets, which is really important insofar as it shows the English court and the English jurisdiction is keen to be a jurisdiction of place for these sorts of claims. And I think a more recent case brought by Dr. Craig Wright's company, Tulip Trading against Van der Lam, emphasizes this further. And the court is now considering in this case whether Bitcoin developers, software developers, owe fiduciary duties to the owners of Bitcoin, the true owners of the Bitcoin. So the court is really advancing this modem, and in this specific case, the Court of Appeal, in fact, has accepted that it's a tribal issue as to whether Bitcoin developers owe these fiduciary duties, and there is the element of trust and confidence. So really in our jurisdiction, we're seeing that the courts over the last 3 or 4 years have been accelerating the law, whereas the statutory regime is sort of behind and in the wind, as Greg has mentioned, and they're keen for cases to be brought and for people to be able to recover their assets, or certainly to hear these cases.
Thank you, Max. And now let's go back to the US. Audra, what are the things, the main points that we need to retain from the testimonial of Gary Gensler, the chair of the SEC, before the Congress?
Well, I think it really just reiterates what I said earlier. And I think Gensler did not say anything revolutionary. He more or less repeated what he's been saying all along, which is that we have crypto regulations. They're called the securities regulations. We've been using the Howey test and guidance from the SEC and case law based on, those tests for a long time, and crypto assets can be analyzed using that existing framework, just like we analyze everything else under the sun in the US with respect to whether or not it is considered a security. And that was really the long and short of his testimony. And so he thinks that crypto exchanges and issuers of crypto of tokens are on notice, and they need to come into compliance immediately.
But
he even stated that these exchanges and crypto issuers have some of the most sophisticated attorneys, securities practitioners working for them, and they're well aware of what the securities law is, and therefore should come into compliance as soon as possible. So I think everyone's kind of on notice.
All right, thank you, Audra. Kenneth, I know the government is clamping down on all digital payment providers facilitating crypto transaction. Is this an opening an avenue for the introduction of new law to regulate cryptocurrency in Uganda? How do you see this?
Yes, definitely. It is opening an avenue for new laws. Looking at crypto in Uganda, I'll also just try to keep my answer short. True, Bank of Uganda has expressed trepidation towards cryptocurrency, specifically under our National Payment Systems Act, like I had introduced earlier. However, under the same act, we have a sandbox arrangement where innovators are allowed to live test.
We are lost Kenneth. All right, so we're going to move because of the time challenge. I'm going to take only one question if anyone wants to. Kenneth, you're back?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was talking on and on. Can you hear me clearly? Am I audible, or is my connection?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, sorry. I had said that yes, Bank of Uganda has expressed trepidation towards cryptocurrencies under our National Payment Systems Act. However, it is still allowing entities to get a license under still the National Payment Systems regulations, sandbox regulations, where innovators are allowed to live test products that involve crypto transactions. And so although the law at the moment is that crypto assets don't fall under our National Payment Systems Act, you can still, as a crypto trader, as a platform or exchange, be able to get a license under our sandbox regime, where Bank of Uganda then just waits and sees how exactly you're transacting.